Welcome. I'm Heather Wolcott, and you are tuning in to the Health and Nutrition Success Show, helping you achieve all things health. Are you ready to prioritize and optimize your health? Join me for inspiring, motivating, and educational steps for you to think about playing the long game when it comes to your health and your life. I share stories around how implementing lifestyle changes have changed others' lives, and you will learn how you can do the same. I love blowing minds with cool tips and hacks that can make a significant difference if you try them, and to see the bigger picture of what happens if you don't. After the show, send me an email to let me know how this show has impacted you or the health of someone you love. Health and nutrition success starts now.
Hey, welcome. I'm Dr. Pat. We are doing the show together, and I am so thrilled about this topic. This is so important. The other day, I was doing a show with Mark, the psychic and the doc, and I realized there were so many people that called in that had, shall I call them, conditions. And I must have given out Heather's website 5 times to 5 different callers that came into that show. Because while you may be calling in about something you're grieving about, what you talk about is how not well you are. How not well you are. And, you know, Mark and I do not touch that. Why not go to somebody that is certified, that knows, that understands, that could work with you on a regular basis? Today, the topic is one that came up for me 2003. Thank goodness for the Dr. Darvish, because hormones became a common phrase in her family and in the work she does with all of us. But we have not progressed to the level that I would like to see us. So today, Heather Wolcott is taking on Hormones 101. You ready for this? What everyone should know, but no one taught you. I want to change that. Nobody even mentioned it to you. So I just want to say, this is the hottest topic, one of the hottest searches that you can have. Why? Maybe men go through it. I don't know. But OMG, how many women get together and talk about how wet their shirts are every night when they go to bed? Raise your hand now and say, hallelujah, amen, because you don't have to. Heather,
Yes.
This is one of these things where we have been suffering.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
let's talk about them. What are hormones? Let's just start at the basic level, and then we can get to why you sweat and have to change the sheets later. Okay.
Yeah, hormones are very, very complex. So we're not going to go into the weeds and be super scientific here. Like the non-sciencey definition is that hormones are signaling molecules or chemical messengers, and they influence kind of like everything in your body, from like mood to metabolism. So whenever we have an issue, especially when it's like mood, anxiety, weight gain, weight loss, I mean, really a hormone is behind it. It's kind of like I would say hormones run the show. People have a hard time losing weight, have a hard time gaining weight. It's usually a hormonal imbalance, or there's something that's not being supported in their endocrine system. And so there's a lot of systems in the body, and there are a lot of hormones, but they basically run the show. That's all you need to know. They run everything.
Yeah. And we don't even know that. That's why we're doing this show, because we don't know that. And if you don't know that, you don't know what questions to ask. You think, I'm not going to tell my doctor, blah, blah, blah. Well, fast forward to where we are. You know, we're looking at these chemical messages, but do they affect everyone? Let's just be clear about that message.
Yeah, that's a great message, because when we talk about hormones, we think about like menopausal women, perimenopausal women, and maybe teenagers. Like teenagers, and you have the 3 Ps where hormones get front center attention. It's puberty, perimenopause, and pregnancy. Okay, those are the 3 stages. But hormones affect men too. So they affect men. Men have hormones too. Men have the same hormones we have. They just have them in different amounts and different ratios. So there isn't a female hormone and a male hormone, or a child hormone and an adult hormone. We all have them. It's how much we have compared to others in certain in the sex hormones, at least. But they affect everybody. Women are the ones who verbalize it a little bit more and vocalize it, because we go through a hormonal change. Men do too. It's called andropause, and it's not as pronounced and as significant as you're going to hear with perimenopause and menopause, because this is perimenopausal age range is 35 to 52. that's a lot of years in a woman's life. That's like the middle of her life. And there are a lot of things happening. So that seems to get a lot of attention. But everyone has hormones and everyone's can be out of whack and everyone's can be perfectly fine.
Yeah, this is so important to talk about. Let me just tell you a simple example. I had a friend that went through this, and her diagnosis was early dementia. Did not have early dementia. Didn't ask the right questions, but all the symptoms that showed up for her, right? Especially the brain fog thing, all of those symptoms that showed up when you go in and you go into a place that doesn't really ask the hormone questions,
Right.
right? They just take out a pad, and if you're over a certain age, they start to write that stuff down. But we have learned a lot about this. So let's talk about some of the common symptoms that people may go through. And maybe you pay attention to them, but maybe you don't. Maybe you just say, you know what, I just can't get any sleep.
There are all the symptoms that everyone complains about all the time: fatigue, brain fog, mood swings, poor sleep, cravings, low libido, hormonal cycle issues for women, kind of everything. Anxiety is a big one. And what you said is actually really profound, because there's a lot more information coming out about this now. There are some real leaders in the women's health space that are speaking out and speaking to this. But when women are going through peri or menopause, a lot of the symptoms with the drop in hormones looks like dementia. It
Yeah,
looks like Alzheimer's. And it feels like it too. The brain fog, the memory loss, the just not feeling quite right. And now, not to say that dementia doesn't happen too, but in that early age, women are kind of getting written off, or you're just getting older. But a lot of times that's just a hormonal issue that can be resolved with other treatments and other protocols like HRT and some other things. But to write that off is a disservice to women for sure, because dementia is a scary thing and we're seeing it come up a lot more, right? It's probably one of our worst epidemics that we have.
yeah,
And it's scary. And we're seeing our parents have it. And my mom has it. My mom has Alzheimer's. So I'm completely freaked out. I'm super aware of when I feel like I have brain fog or I can't remember something. And then I have to remember, like, oh, my age and oh, my hormones. And this isn't, I can take care of it with other things. So it's a very important topic. But
yeah.
that hormone imbalance can look like so many things in your life, just so many things that just get misread for something else.
Yeah. So here's a recent trend. I want you to comment on this, and I want to talk about this, like, what we treat symptoms. So I was interviewing somebody, I can't remember who now, but she was kind of giving me a backstory before we went on air about long-term COVID. And she described long-term COVID, and I said, are you sure that's not your hormones? Right. So now we've got this other bucket that people are getting placed in, and they're not getting tested. And these are the questions we need to really start to ask and draw a line in the sand. When you go to your doctor and you get a long-term COVID thing, you should be saying, I want my hormones tested.
Oh,
Why?
absolutely.
Right? HCG, let's talk about it for a minute. HCG is the diet kind of thing. But there's an interesting finding with that. Here you go. You ready? When women are pregnant with this HCG, right? I'm not like you. I don't know the details, so correct me if I say something wacko. And you have rheumatoid arthritis. I don't care what level you have. Your rheumatoid arthritis magically goes away. And not everybody, but Google the science on it. That hormone does something to dispel the symptoms, if not the blood work of RA. And I read these articles because that was one of my diagnoses. Of course, it was not correct, but I read about it and I started using HCG. And hello, yeah, what happened? Now, the HCG diet is not for the weary. I don't even talk about it anymore because I don't understand it. But when I was in my experimental phase, I did try it. The change in my body, I thought, was from the diet. It wasn't. Now, please, we're not doctors here. This is my experience. This is what Heather knows. But we need to get better at asking better questions.
Yeah.
So weight gain, let's talk about a few things before we talk about what should we pay attention to, because, oh, I gained 50 pounds. Okay, you think that's normal? So let's, unless you're eating 5 cakes a day and 6 bags of chips or something, or you're Charlize Theron and you have to gain that weight for the movie Monster, something ain't right, right?
Yeah. When we look at weight gain, and also I just want to backtrack just a minute, because
Sure.
I was kind of addressing perimenopause and menopause, but the hormones go way beyond
Thank you.
just have estrogen and progesterone, and we're going to talk about just the 5 big ones. Those are big ones, and they're connected to a lot of things. But when we're looking at weight gain, um, gosh, there are a lot of things that could be pointing to that when we're looking at hormones. Cortisol is a common one. I currently have a client right now in her mid 40s, really struggling with weight loss. She's a teacher, a mom of 3 or 4. I don't even really know. I know a few of her kids, but she's got a lot of kids. They're all involved in sports. She's a type A personality. She trains hard, goes hard. And I've connected her with a practitioner that I work with here, and her cortisol was just like over, above and beyond. I mean, one of the highest that
Wow.
she's seen. And so cortisol is a stress hormone. It's when we're stressed, and it comes cortisol, and it has a role to do. So our hormones aren't bad. Cortisol is not a bad hormone. It's doing its job. We're just creating an environment where we need more of it, right? So
Mm,
she's really struggling with weight loss. Her food is dialed in, her training's dialed in. We've cut back on a lot of things. She was overtraining. She was overdoing everything, under eating, overtraining, couldn't lose weight. She didn't understand. And it really was just dialing in this one particular hormone. Her insulin wasn't too bad. It's a little elevated, but not as bad as someone who might be like really strongly insulin resistant. It was just her cortisol levels were so topped off, her body couldn't let go of any weight.
yeah. Yeah.
So managing stress. So all of these hormones, because they're signaling molecules and they're messengers in our body, they're going to respond to something. And they're going to respond to our thoughts, they're going to respond to our food, they're going to respond to our environment and just the state that we live in. So it's really not just a like a chemistry thing. It's a lifestyle thing. It's
Yeah.
your entire lifestyle is going to affect just where these hormones land and when they're going up and when they're coming down, and how well they can cycle through and be balanced.
Yeah. We are a symptom society.
Right.
We are trying to educate others that the symptom is not always the root cause. And you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like you're sneezing. It's a symptom, but you think it's the flu and it's an allergy because
Right.
you haven't figured it out. But we've gotten into this habit of being symptom obsessed.
Well, you know why? Because you can make a drug to take care of a symptom.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And do you know that drugs are not going to come onto the market unless there's a symptom that they can associate with it? There has to be a symptom in order for them to make it any further. So with symptoms comes a drug, and now we can get rid of symptoms, but
Yeah.
that's reactive, it's not proactive.
Yeah. Now, in previous shows, I want to say this here before I want you to give out some information. In previous show, we talked about a number of things. The number one thing was protein, and that came up quite a bit. And it came up for me, and I went back to my practitioner and I said, "Okay, can you evaluate this for me? This is my activity. This is what I'm doing." And my practitioner said, "Your brain is scoring a 2 because for the amount of activity, the amount of stress, the amount of blah, blah, blah you burn, you need to be taking protein every hour, Pat." And I thought, I did say this. Okay, true. I said, "I don't have time." And she looked at me and said, "Are you kidding? Go to Costco, get yourself a healthy protein drink. We have healthy protein. I mean, you can't get a healthy something every hour and put it in." And I realized how stupid that question is. I think that's what's happening across the board because we go into this, I can't stand the symptom. I want to feel better and I don't have time to take care of myself. How many times have you heard that?
Every single client, every single day. I mean, I could tell you every single client and I have had that exact conversation over and over. They
All
don't
right.
have the time. I'm on the go, go, go. This
Exactly.
particular teacher client of mine has a really tight schedule, and I just wanted her to walk. I said, I just want you to go for a morning walk and an evening walk. Let's take it down lots of notches because you're overdoing everything. I don't have time. I can't I don't like the cold. I don't want to walk in the dark. I don't want to, going into winter. And I said, well, that's what hats and coats are for. So you go buy yourself some and go out and walk. But I had a lunch meeting with someone on Friday, and she's a practitioner and she runs a very successful practice out here. And it wants to get into more strength training because she just hasn't been able to get that into her schedule. She said, okay, I have 5 minutes at lunch and 5 minutes before I go home where I could do something other than sit at my desk, because her day is so jam-packed with zero margins.
I know that
And
feeling.
it's like 5 minutes. Like what is that? So there's a lot to unpack with that, and everyone has a different, and I understood her situation and where she is, between financially and the work that she does. And she has her hands in lots of cookie jars and she's doing a great job helping a lot of people, but there's a price to pay, right?
Yeah.
There's a price to pay. And I think we're really quick at making excuses, and we're quick at saying, I don't have time for that. Give me the pill. I mean, that's kind of the story that we've all heard, right? If there was a pill, just everyone wants the pill. So what do we have? We have a lot of pills, but
Yeah.
they're not helping anybody. They're not making anyone get healthier. They just require more pills down the road.
It's so funny we're talking about this, and I know we've done this in previous shows, but before we go on, number one, this is not a journey that I'm able to take alone. And you're probably looking at me and thinking, what do you mean? You, Pat? Seriously? No, this is the kind of journey where you need help, because for me, I don't even know what I don't know. I highly encourage you to reach out to Heather, because part of this is just having a safe place to answer the questions that may seem really dumb to you, but are not going to seem anything close to that to Heather. And what we're going through right now is the stigma of silence. I'm just saying, because you think, I can't tell people I have to change their sheets at night. I can't tell people I couldn't remember my keys. Yes, you have to. And what I'm trying to encourage you to do is call the expert. Now, why do I say that? In the past month, I have talked to more people since you and I did the last show. And the conversations are just like we talked about. When somebody said to me, I don't have time. Now I know this person. I said, seriously, really, Martha, you don't have time? Okay. Remember when you were in the non-fat zone? Remember how much time you took to make sure you went to the grocery store to buy everything non-fat, and that cost you an hour, 2 hours? How did you have time then? And you don't have time now. I don't understand. So the question is, raise the bar on how important this is. Heather, how do people find out about you? Because next we're going to talk about, I don't know, what hormones? I don't know. Do I take this? But how do they reach out to you?
Yes. So obviously my email is what is my email? Heather@heatherwolcott.com. I think that my Instagram is at Heather Johnson Wolcott. My Facebook is linked to my Instagram. Instagram is a great place to find me. Follow me there. I post content related to health, wellness, fitness. If it's not my content, I share content in my stories. I always have a story going on something. So I'll always have something in my stories that is either my kid playing baseball or it's about health and wellness. It's one of those two things. Maybe my dog's in there too. But that's fun. And I have a website, heatherwolcott.com. Would love to help people have this conversation, because sometimes they just don't know where to start. And maybe it's not as much as they think it is. Sometimes it's just one of these pillars of health that needs a little bit more attention, because they think they're doing everything right, but there's just one that they're struggling on. And we can just zero in on that, evaluate everything and take a look and put together a protocol and a plan and have good conversations that help move them forward.
I love it, because we're now talking about something that should be at the top of everybody's list to be conscious and aware of. Let's talk about how difficult it is for some people when they enter the conversation of hormones. They go into a space, well, first of all, they're not thinking right. And then they go into a space of like, I'm so overwhelmed. Which do I take? And I don't know, because they're trying to do it themselves. You cannot do this yourself. I'm sorry. But let's talk about, how do I know what hormones to take? I mean, there are like so many in the body. What are the big five?
Okay, so these aren't hormones to take. These are hormones to know about, right?
to
To be
know
aware
about.
or to be tested. So
Yeah,
yeah.
testing.
So we have 50 hormones in the body. 50, that's a lot. And they all are important, but we're not going to go through 50. We're going to go through 5. So the ones that everyone's going to know, these cortisol, we have cortisol, insulin, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Okay, those are the basics. Now, vitamin D is a hormone, melatonin is a hormone, cholesterol is a hormone. We're not going to go down those because those are labs within themselves. And then we have the whole thyroid system, right? You have the whole endocrine system. But when it comes to what most people are, their symptoms are tied to, and these are good ones to start with. So when you look at cortisol, we're really associating that with stress. When I talked about sleep, we talk about cortisol as our hormone of daylight, hormone of daytime, and it's a really important hormone. So we're not saying cortisol is a bad hormone. It's when we're in a constant chronic stress state where that cortisol gets elevated. And when it gets elevated, it creates a domino because hormones never work independently. They are messengers that talk to each other all the time. So when one hormone gets a little out of whack, it's literally like a ripple or a domino effect. They're all just going to start like acting up. You've got one bad actor and you get a whole bunch of bad actors. So cortisol is really important. And I get kind of frustrated when I hear people always talk about cortisol in the negative.
Yeah,
The
a
stress
lot.
response. Cortisol
People are doing that a lot.
a lot.
A lot.
A lot because we are stressed. So we are dealing with a high stress state, which means too much cortisol. But then we don't want to just abolish cortisol either. So I just wanted to put cortisol has its purpose. But it is a stress response. So we have 3 stress hormones, three stress pathways. One is glucagon, adrenaline, and cortisol, and they keep us alive. So cortisol is not a bad thing, but when it's elevated, it's associated with stress. Second one is insulin. Most people are very familiar with insulin. A lot of people just associate it with diabetes, but obviously insulin is released by the pancreas whenever we eat. So its job is to bring, we eat, we have a blood glucose excursion, which is perfectly fine and normal. And then insulin comes in and it helps bring glucose into our cells. So we hear a lot about insulin resistance versus insulin sensitivity. Ideally, for optimal health, we want to be insulin sensitive. We want to have a really strong sensitivity. So that way, when insulin comes up and tries to get glucose into the cell, it's like an open door. Insulin resistance is when that the cell's not really listening to the insulin so much anymore. And there's a lot of pathways to go down with that. It's not as cut and dry as a lot of people will make it. It's not that we have too much insulin. It's just that we have a dysfunction in our energy conversion. So that's more of a mitochondrial thing.
Yeah.
Got cortisol, which is stress. We have insulin, which is going to be associated with blood sugar. And then we've got estrogen. Now, estrogen is not just a female hormone. Guys have it too. We have more than guys do, but estrogen is going to be associated with our menstrual cycle, obviously, with mood and with weight. Estrogen has also gotten a really scary messaging around cancer, and I'm not
Yes.
going to go down there, but there's
No.
a lot of information that's coming out where there was a lot of misinformation, and that was from a Women's Health Initiative in the early 2000s, which was a really bad study. So there's a lot of estrogen has better press lately, which is good. It needs some better press. So estrogen is our female dominant hormone. It makes our hips curvy and all of our female features. That's an estrogen hormone, but it's also mood and it can control weight. So for estrogen dominant, sometimes they have a hard time losing weight. Progesterone and estrogen counter each other. So progesterone, I have a hormone webinar and I give each of my hormones personalities. So
wow.
estrogen is kind of flirty and she's the one that gives us confidence. She's the one that makes our lips full. When we're high in our estrogen in our cycle, it's kind of like natural Botox. We feel really confident. It's a great time to give a presentation, to do a podcast, to ask for a raise, to, strut on stage. Progesterone is kind of the counter. Progesterone is a little quieter, comes up in our luteal phase or second half of our cycle, but it's associated with calm, sleep, and also fertility. So when you get hormone testing, what they're really looking at a lot of times is your progesterone. They counter each other. So you never take estrogen without progesterone if you have a uterus, right? So progesterone is a very important hormone. And then we have testosterone, which is considered the male hormone, but women have it too. And here's a pop quiz. What hormone do we have most of in our bodies? We have more testosterone than any other hormone in our body. Who would have thought? but we do. We don't have as much as men, but it's our dominant sex hormone.
Yeah.
So I was going to say testosterone is the hormone of libido and of drive and of strength. So estrogen and testosterone really balance each other really, really well and are both important. But those are the ones that get the most conversation when we're looking at testing hormones. I have a client right now who's having a hard time losing weight. She's eating right, doing all the things. And I'm like, she's getting actually her labs done, her hormones tested this week. But I said, your testosterone could be completely tanked. That might be why you're not seeing any body composition changes, because when that testosterone is low, muscle is really hard to put on.
Yeah. I want to encourage people to do two things before we go to break. And this is from my experience. Again, I'm a doctor, but I'm not a medical doctor, but I am somebody that has a history with this journey starting from a mystery disease in 2004. So I'm going to talk from my experience. First, thank you for the show we did on sleep. I am sleeping like a baby. And in that show, if y'all missed it, I'm going to make sure, Stefan, that we make sure we put that show with Heather that we did on sleep in our newsletter. So give that to Kim. Why? I have been considered the most, I'm going to say it, sleepless in Seattle person. That is not true. Things were not being, I'm telling you, bright lights flashing, whatever you think you got going on, you got to listen to that show. But I made some changes, and OMG, I slept so much Saturday, I missed ping pong.
That's a big deal.
It is a big deal. The second thing that you taught us around that was you can't make it up. See, I'm thinking I'm going to sleep in on Sunday for the 20 hours I didn't sleep during the week. So I need to thank you personal, but it isn't just that show. It's the many things you've said. Now, fast cycle to this show. Before we got on air, I said, Heather, I need to know the test because now I've got the attention of my doctor. And because of the mystery disease and because of health insurance, I have to keep getting tested. Bottom line is, when your doctor says, don't worry about testosterone because that's a man thing, you need to stop your doctor and say, you need to run the blood work, right?
Or you fire your doctor.
Or you fire your doctor. But you see what you're doing, and I hope through these shows, what people are doing is drawing a line in the sand and asking the questions. And if you're not getting answer, get a new doctor, because so many women have been told, Heather, you know this, testosterone, don't worry about that. That's like a man thing. How many men have been told, don't worry about the estrogen thing, dude? That's a chick thing. The bottom line is it's not, it's a body thing. Now, before we go to break, and we may touch upon thyroid a minute because this is very important to know about thyroids. There are certain tests you need to ask for about thyroid, or you ain't going to get the thyroid stuff.
Right.
I want to talk about that when we come back. We're going to take a short break. Before we go, how do people get a hold of your webinars and stuff? Because I know you've mentioned them. Are you going to like do any kind of event or something?
I'm glad you said that because you're going to hold me accountable. I'm
going to hold you accountable because you're going to be part of my summit too.
I would, yes, I've run them in the past. Last year, last couple of years, I did a lot of webinars. This year, I don't know. How are we almost halfway through 2025?
Oh, don't even ask me.
Where I was to do a webinar every week or every month, and we are, and it's May. But please reach out to me because I will be doing webinars. Part of it is a technology thing. I need a new platform and someone's going to help me with that.
Yes.
That way I can run them and then have them, accessible and purchase, right? They kind of are, but it's a little bit of it's kind of a path to get there. But I do have a sleep webinar and I have a hormone webinar. I've got lots of webinars on all the topics that we've talked about. But if someone were to reach out to me, I love doing these corporately. I've done them for some big companies before they've hired me for their women's division or the female employees. So I've done several of those. I've done them at schools. I would love to do them for some college campuses as well, especially the hormones and the sleep. But people just reach out to me and ask me about them and we'll have a conversation about webinars.
Yeah. And I want to just say this. I live in the Pacific Northwest now, but I grew up in the tri-state corporate area. And as part of HR, one of the first things we battled in AT&T, when it was AT&T, was to make sure that employee assistance programs had the very foundation of what we're talking about here. And it was a battle to get the all-male board and executives to allow us to even have a conversation about stress. Fast forward to where we are now, you all need to come out here to the Pacific Northwest because we making airplanes. And some of the people making them airplanes really could use a little help. My buddies play ping pong to take care of their stress. The last thing I want to say before we go to break is this, and hopefully Heather will talk about it. Sometimes we feel down a court. What is that about? Now, Monday, or I can't remember the night, I was playing at a very championship Korean speaking place, and I don't speak Korean, but I understand hand language, right? And I play my best there. And I finished playing because I felt tired until the top dog, David, his ranking has got to be 2,200 or more. He trains the Korean women, saw me sitting at the other end and waved at me and pointed at me and said, come here. And Linda's looking at me like, he's talking to you. Right? Why did I, who thought she was tired, all of a sudden perk up and play better than I am? What is going on with that? We're going to talk about that in terms of hormones, but we're also going to talk about what happens when our motivation gets strained because we're not treating our hormones special. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. I wanted you to know two things. This is the Health and Nutrition Success Show with Heather Wolcott. The other thing I want you to know is Heather is an expert in this field. And the reason I say that is because sometimes we shop around. You shop around for clothes. You're going to say, I'm going to buy this clothes here because it's $2. You get it home and it's falling apart. See, when it comes to your health and your well-being and your wellness, and I say those three things because it's not just physical, it's emotional, it's mental, it's physical, and it's spiritual for those of you out there that yelled at me last time when I forgot that. But the bottom line is, if you're somebody like me and you've gone through the charade of working with people that don't quite know what Heather knows, don't waste your time. It's a free call to her. We're living now in a stage where stress is up. People are just overwhelmed with everything going on. Don't understand why you can't stay up as long as your children anymore. And a quarter of a mile walk seems like a marathon. These are the things that I hear people say. Heather, how do people get you? Let's talk about this. And yes, we're going to be chit-chatting about the webinars you're going to be doing.
Yeah. Okay, good.
How do they get you? What's the best way?
Yeah. Email and Instagram. I always just plug Instagram because I have more content there. I feel like it's my virtual resume. And you can see a little bit more into what I do and some of the messaging that I put out there. My Instagram is at Heather Johnson Wolcott. Link to my Facebook. You can find me on Facebook is just as good. Everything on Instagram is on Facebook. My Instagram actually is better because my Facebook was hacked last year. So
yeah,
in November. I know I got locked out. I forgot my password. It's really what happened. We won't talk about that. It was kind of traumatic when it all
it is
happened
traumatic.
because all of my memories of my kids, I mean, everything is now gone and we won't even really go there. But Facebook is current. It just doesn't have as much content as Instagram.
Yeah.
My website's heatherwolcott.com. My email is heather@heatherwolcott.com. So I'm very easy to reach. I love talking to people. I love getting emails with questions. And I offer free Zooms just to connect and learn more about you and what your question might be and how I can help you, or if I can't help you, who I could direct you to or connect you with. I love connecting people with other amazing people that I know. So I don't have all the answers for everybody, but I have someone, I probably know someone who could help if I can't. So I cover a lot of bases. I can cover a lot of territory, but I can't cover it all. So I will pass you on to someone who would be awesome if I'm not able to hit all the check all the boxes.
That's it. Because you see, we don't know what we don't know. But when we come to you, if you don't know how to do it, I do the same thing. You know, I have people want to do shows on the network, and I'm like, you know, don't think that show you want to do is quite a fit, but go over to Jeff. Jeff can help you. This is why you and I do what we do, because it's not about a yes or no. It's about the journey of helping people. Now, two things I want to touch upon. I want to touch upon how do I know my hormones are off, but I want a little bit more of a conversation on the thyroid, because it is one of the most misunderstood. Don't even know the questions. You run the blood work, doesn't really tell you what you need to know. And yet we're hearing more and more about thyroid. Dysfunction. I don't have a better word. So give us a quick, just give us something quick before we know, how do I know it's off? Because sometimes you think it's off because I'm not eating protein, and the bottom line, your thyroid is really shot.
Yeah, thyroid is a really tough one. And I empathize with women who are struggling with thyroid. I would have to say, as I'm looking at all my file folders over here of all my female clients, I think almost every single one of them has a thyroid issue, a thyroid condition to some degree they've been diagnosed with. Almost every single one. This was like, they came to me and they're like, I also have a thyroid thing. I'm also taking thyroid. I'm also, adjusting my thyroid. What's tricky and what's a little frustrating is when a lot of my clients come to me with thyroid issues and they've been given a thyroid medication, the testing hasn't been all that awesome. So when Dr. Pat and I were talking before this, I have a list of labs that I recommend to all my clients. And I think it's like labs to take. It's like the document is called like labs to take female, labs to take male. And I've accrued this list from my own personal tests that I've had through functional medical doctors. And when you look at, what's the most comprehensive way to see what's going on. And what a lot of doctors will do is they'll measure your TSH. That's your thyroid stimulating hormone. And if your TSH is high versus low, they make a decision. When I suggest labs to my clients or to my friends and family and anyone who asks, I'll I'm not the doctor prescribing them and writing the script for them, but I'm saying these are what I would take to your doctor and have that conversation. It is shocking and it's disappointing how many of my clients will give this list to their doctor. Most likely it's an MD, and I'm not throwing them under the bus because some are absolutely fantastic, but they give them to their doctor and the doctor say, oh, I don't know this lab. We can't run that. Our lab doesn't run that. And it's an advanced lipid panel. It's not that complicated, but it's important. They don't run fasting insulin on pretty much any panel. And fasting insulin is an incredible test to look at your insulin sensitivity versus insulin resistance. It's kind of like, and it's a cheap test. It's not expensive. So I love to give clients that list, but in that list is a thyroid, and it's a complete thyroid panel. So you want to look at TSH, T4, T3, reverse T3, and you want to look at antibodies. You need to have a full profile of what's happening with your thyroid because, again, hormones are, it's a domino ripple effect. If one thyroid hormone is off, like say one is elevated, it could be because something else is low. There's a misconnection. TSH is called through the pituitary. So the pituitary gland tells the thyroid to produce TSH. And then the thyroid then has to deal with T4 and T3. T4 is an inactive thyroid hormone. It needs to convert into T3. T3 is the active hormone. And then we have something called reverse T3. And I don't want to get too down into the weeds, but when you're only looking at TSH, that's a pituitary gland issue. It's not a thyroid issue. So a lot of thyroids are getting treated or untreated based on something that's being called up by the pituitary gland. Yeah. Thyroid then calls out the T4 and the T3. So it's complicated. Sadly, a lot of endocrinologists, I think, try to do their best, but they aren't always of best service. So I like to suggest if you have an endocrinologist, also team up with a functional medical doctor because there's a lot of root cause things. There's a lot of nutritional things. There's a lot of other things that are related to the way that thyroid is going to function. So thyroid's complicated. It is that hormone that's going to regulate weight gain, weight loss. It's the metabolism hormone. Metabolism organ to say. So if you're hypothyroid, you have a slow thyroid, you usually have a slower metabolism. Hyper is what everyone thinks they want because, oh, I'd love to have a fast metabolism, but that's not actually the case either because it needs to be properly balanced and
Yeah.
they're all dependent on each other. And carbohydrates are really important for thyroid function. So I get a little concerned and leery with the trend of keto and a lot of fast,
Oh,
low carb for women, especially as they're 35 and older, hitting perimenopause because that the conversion of T4 to T3, you need to have glucose. I'm sorry, you need to have insulin present in order for some of these conversions to happen. And if we're trying to keep glucose low and insulin low, we're suppressing a lot of thyroid function. So
yeah.
it's a dance. You have to be really careful and you have to know what you're doing, but you need really complete and thorough blood tests to really know what to do.
Yeah.
And it's tricky. And I empathize because having your thyroid off can really make you feel crummy.
Yeah. And by the way, during the break, I said to Heather, can you please email all the tests that I
Yes.
need to ask my doctor for? Because I've tried to get this out of my doctor. And he finally said to me, smiling actually, you know what? Why don't you just tell me the test to run? I would just get them run. I said, no problemo. All right. Now, that leads to the next point. You can read articles, you can see the infomercial, you can go buy that brain pill, and you think I'm going to take that brain pill and I'm going to be all better. You're guessing. And Heather, you say test.
Test.
Don't.
Yes.
Test, don't get.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't want to ask for the wrong tests. And I don't want to, and my doctor knows this is not in his wheelhouse. But I did have an insulin test, but nobody told me to fast. So let's move on to the next one.
Oh, goodness.
What wrecks the hormones? Because I want to spend the rest of the show on this. So this is what you need to know.
Yeah. Yeah, this is really, really, this is important because what we're not realizing is, like I said, it's all the lifestyle thing. And I actually I want to go back really fast on the tests because
Sure.
there is a list that I will email you, but there are some other really good tests that are very hormone specific other than like a complete thyroid panel. When you're getting your sex hormones tested, the blood work is good. And urine is also really good and saliva. So if you have a doctor who will, I mean, it's going to cost you more. If you could do all three, that's really the gold standard. The
Yeah.
Dutch test is a really popular hormone test. And for a long time, and in my hormone webinar, I really hailed the praise of the Dutch test. It's called dry urine hormone chemical test. It's Dutch. It's great, but it measures metabolites, whereas blood is going to measure serum levels. So a combination of both are actually really, really good. You can do some tests just for like a stress index. ASI is the adrenal stress index, and that will measure cortisol. So there are other tests out there that are very specific to stress hormones or to sex hormones, in addition to a full panel. And so again, that's another thing that I can have a conversation with you with, but just know that there are a lot of ways to assess these things. It's not only just through a blood draw, but saliva and urine are also very, very successful as well. But yeah, what kills our hormones? Well, it's going to be your lifestyle. So I'll tell you right off the bat, and Dr. Pat can probably guess this, if you are not sleeping well and you're not prioritizing sleep, good luck with all of the other hormones, because melatonin is a hormone, ghrelin and leptin are signaling hormones for appetite regulation and satiety. Then you have all these, it's a downstream. So sleep is got to be number one. If you are not sleeping well, if you're not sleeping long enough, it's not good quality sleep. If you're taking sleep medication, that is not real sleep, that's not natural sleep, that's sedation. So there's a whole conversation to have first around sleep. Other things are your diet. I mean, obviously your diet. What kind of foods are you putting in your body? But another step above that or beyond that would be pesticides and herbicides and glyphosate, because those are chemicals that are disrupting our hormones. So you probably heard of endocrine disruptors in a lot of things right now, but those chemicals and glyphosate in particular will they're just like, it's like a bomb went off in our body. So those will definitely disrupt our hormones. Just overall stress, your diet, also the kind of water you're drinking, plastics. I mean, the plastic thing right now is a conversation that's kind of scary. The microplastics. I think we might have talked about that at one point, and where it got brought
They're
up.
crazy. It's just absurdity.
Yeah. It's scary because all of a sudden you look around the room you're in and how many things are plastic that you've just encountered or that you deal with every day. And so I don't like going down that as like fear mongering, but when you can use glass instead of plastic or stainless steel instead of plastic, and there are a lot of things that you can do. And I talk to my clients about that as well. So that's definitely going to be an endocrine disruptor, and it's going to mess up with your hormones and other toxins, your cleaning products, your skincare products, your shampoo. I'll tell you, one of the worst things that you can have in your house are those plug-in.
Oh,
Those are the fragrant stuff that, or any kind of fragrant thing, like the thing that you hang on your rear view mirror,
all of those.
little like that thing. Those plugins, Febreze, anything that kills odor. Those are not only neurotoxic, but those are endocrine disruptors. And so when I say endocrine disruptor, you're looking at your endocrine system, which is your hormonal system, and that's just going to start creating things out of balance. So it's just kind of taking a step back and evaluating, different areas of your life. I had a good friend and a client of over 20 years send me a text it was funny, it was Mother's Day, and her text was, I want to do a detox and a cleanse. What products should I use? And so I had to I had to wait till I had a lot of time to respond to this one, because although it sounds like we should do a detox to help balance our hormones, we need to do a cleanse to kind of get our hormones and our gut and everything rebalanced. I would say, first, I'm not a big fan of those. I think our body has a natural detoxification process. I mean, we sweat, we urinate, we eliminate, and we also have a liver that's job is to detoxify. It's what are you bringing into your life? Like it's swapping out some of the invaders and then making sure you're getting really good sleep. Those are the things that are really, I mean, stress alone. Like I said, several of my clients are just drowning in work. They have no free time. They have no margin of error. I mean, no margin in their life for like fun, for for a social life, to relax, to go for a walk, to do any of these things. I mean, how do you think your body's going to respond when it just has like a 100-pound weight on it all the time? It's just under a pressure cooker, right?
I just went through this last weekend and I alluded to it earlier, but I'm going to tell you, on a Saturday when I don't go to play table tennis, there's something wrong. I mean, really wrong, because there's no other day of the week that I really give to myself in that way. And I couldn't do it. And I realized the stress I was under, the pressure I was under, and it had very little to do with business, but it was other things, things that, I'm in a battle with my office space landlord now because they've been negligent. The elevator hasn't worked for a month. I have clients that are in walkers and wheelchairs, and they're like, are you kidding me, Transformation Network? I thought you honored the people with disability. I'm just like, it's just hit me hard. And so I decided to draw a line in the sand. And the minute I did that, I felt good. But it was an indicator for me. And all I could see is your face. But it didn't matter. I couldn't muster it up. I turned it around and I did something really important that day that needed to be done. But that was an indicator for me. The other thing I want you to I want to talk about this for a minute. I mean it when I say to all of you, you may not even know what you don't know. And to find a safe place to express that is with Heather Wolcott. Why? She just told you. Many clients, she's an expert in the field. She teaches this and she knows what it's about. She's been there herself. All of us have. But wouldn't you want to ask a question that may open up a door to a new set of freedom for you? And today's show alone is that important. Now, the skin. We don't get that the skin is like what? The biggest organ we have, right? I was out with some people and the woman went in her purse and pulled out a lotion. And it started put it all over her hands and she started put it up her arm. And she said, here, do you want it? And I said, well, can I look at the label? Can I look? There wasn't a word in it that I could pronounce.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I try not to be, she was being kind. And I said, "Did you read the label on this?" She said, "No, my friend told me it was really good. It comes from a da da da." I said, "Please read the label. If you can't pronounce it, look it up. If you go look it up, you find nothing in this is natural." She said, "You're kidding me. I put this all over my body." And I was very non-expressive. And I said, "Well, how long have you been doing that?" "Oh, I've been using this for 10 years."
Mhm.
I said, "You need to," I said, "I know somebody on my show. I'll email you who she is and you can have a conversation, but just to check." See, we don't know what we don't know. Isn't that why you're doing what you do, Heather?
Yeah, it's incredible how many conversations I have with people, and I mean, this just happened this morning. I had a walking group. I had my Wednesday walking group, and one of the gals who came today was actually one of my clients. I haven't worked with her in about a year. She had a lot of health stuff go on last year and high stress, wasn't taking care of herself. And we were talking about some training, an influencer on Instagram who she follows. And I was like, I don't even know who that is because a lot of that's noise. There's a lot of noise. And so when I just said, Here's why I'm not a big fan of that style of training." And I just kind of went through some main bullet points. It's not structured, it's not phased, it's not programmed, it's not designed for you. It's more hit, it's too much stress and cortisol, blah blah blah. And she just kind of had that like, oh, I didn't know that because this gal's super famous and she trains a bunch of celebrities and she's got however many thousands of followers on Instagram. I said that's kind of noise. But she doesn't, you don't know what you don't know. And so I just kind of threw a few things out to her, and I was like, I will train you and I will program for you. And it was one of those like, oh,
Yeah.
I never knew any of that mattered, And so you don't know until someone who's got a different perspective can look at all these things. When clients send me a food journal and then we have a conversation, we meet for 90 minutes. And then I ask a little bit about sleep and we start looking at some of the supplements. And then we kind of go in all these different rabbit holes. I just can put together a pretty good story. I kind of get a pretty good idea of what's going on and why they're not. And I ask them what their goals are. Like, well, what do you want? And they'll say they want this, and they're not getting it based on what they're doing. I said, that's right, because nothing that you're doing is going to lead you to this goal.
Yeah.
You're not training the right way. You're not eating the right way. You're not sleeping the right way. So that's very easy for me to help
Yeah.
people. But when you put it all together on paper, and then someone kind of I don't want to say evaluates. Like I'm not judging it. I'm assessing it. It's like, oh, they never connect the dots. Oh, I didn't think about that. I thought because I was working out 5 days a week, I should be losing weight. I'm like, not when you're working out like that. You're not going to. It's too much. Most of the time, most people are under eating and they're overtraining. Very rarely do I have someone who is overeating and I do have some people who are undertrained. They're not training at all, or they're not training appropriately,
Yeah.
but for the most part. And that is a great way to crash your hormones. That's a
Yeah.
great way for cortisol to be out of whack, for testosterone to tank, for progesterone. Cortisol is going to crash your progesterone when it's elevated, and then estrogen. You have symptoms of estrogen dominance when really it's just that progesterone is low. It's not that estrogen is high per se. Estrogen might be right where it needs to be. It's just that your progesterone is tanked. So it
Yeah.
looks like estrogen dominance. So what we need to do is just bring the progesterone up, right? Then they're in a perfect ratio. So it's just over and over and over again. They're just not putting it together. And that's what I love to do. And that's where I feel like that my strengths are, is just kind of seeing it all and putting it together for people. But yeah, having a conversation with someone who knows a little bit more than you do, is always helpful. You're always going to be the best expert on your own body, but sometimes we're just so influenced by the noise and
Yeah.
what we see. And social media it's good, and then it can do it can be great. It works great for me. I get clients from it, but it also can be a way to spread a lot of noise.
Misinformation. Heather, thank you for today. I mean, this was so perfect. And I want to say this, and I have a couple of people listening today who said to me, I already have a practitioner. And what I said to them is listen to the show or listen to the playback, because this isn't about whether you have a practitioner. This is about what you're doing. Is it working or not? That's it.
I'm not your
Heather,
doctor. I
no,
will support what your doctor is working with you on, but
exactly. Exactly. But if something's not working, just ask yourself, huh, why that's not working. And if you don't like the answer you get, heatherwolcott.com, WOLCOTT.com. Instagram, you can find it on our website. Don't be afraid to ask. Go to somebody that knows and go to a space and have a conversation with Heather where you're going to be respected and heard. Thank you, Heather, for all you're doing.
Oh, thank you. This is great. I love having the platform and being able to talk. So it's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah, that's why I'm getting all my panels run.
That's right. I'm going to send
That's exactly why.
them to you.
Because I realize now I have not been getting the right blood work or any other work done. So thank you for that. Stefan, thank you for hitting all the right buttons. Thank you all for tuning us in and turning us on. We'll see you next time.
You have been listening to the Health and Nutrition Success Show, helping you achieve all things health on Transformation Talk Radio. I'm Heather Wolcott. Tune in second Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific for more pearls to inspire, motivate, and educate you to make changes in your and your family's health and lives. I love blowing minds with cool tips and hacks that can make a significant difference if you try them. In each episode, I share client stories about their successes and their wins. Send me an email to heather@heatherwolcott.com and let me know how the show has impacted you or what you've done to improve your health or the health of someone you love. You can also visit my website, heatherwolcott.com.